about to go live.
That's fantastic.
Hey,
The doctor's appointment was good.
good. Good, good, good.
So we're doing it late today, guys. Welcome to show number 15. Jason and I are now going to start calling, I think, work in progress. That's
Work in progress. That's kind of what it is. It's what the show is and what we are doing all the time. So it seems like a good title. We talked about this last call at the end, and we're like, work in progress. Jesus, of course. We both had the idea at the same time.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And yeah, so yeah, like just today, like yeah, it was another thing in progress. Couldn't get to the 3 o'clock meeting, so it got pushed.
Yeah, what happens? So what's going on?
Well, so I mean, this is something that I think someone actually had written in to kind of talk about this, and this type of thing comes up a lot, right? It's basically just how do you manage confidence? Like for example, we've been doing some great things at Highrise, in my opinion, but I think the metrics even show it. Like when I came in, the first day, like. And I've talked about this in some of the blog posts I've written about, taking on this project when it was announced that, 37 Signals was going to become Basecamp. There was an immediate, like, real sudden, like, exodus of Highrise customers and kind of like a loss, I think, of confidence, to use that word again. But it was like people were worried. People were worried it was going to shut down. And all these blog posts came out. It's going to shut down. It's going to shut down. And like so. There's this big momentum of negative momentum. And so we came in and immediately things started turning around. Customer growth started going up and we've seen some really good numbers since then. Then all of a sudden August, it was like, we've talked about it on the show before, but August was like, what the hell happened? Did we release something that's broken and it didn't make any sense? I've been looking at search. It's possible some of our, search terms are lower or something happened at Google. I don't know. Still kind of looking into that. But then all of a sudden, like, the beginning of September now, things are turning around again. So maybe it is seasonal. Maybe it is people on vacation. I don't know. I'm still ironing that out. But
summer's a little bit slow for us too, actually. So I don't know if it's related.
It might be, but it's one of those examples of like how when you see that happen, it's like shit. Like is the stuff we're doing wrong? I mean, it's really easy to lose confidence during like a moment like this. And it's like what it's immediately it's like, oh my God, do we just what do we change? Like what do we do differently? Like what's not working? And it's really easy to just like want to just redo everything. Like how do you manage your confidence? How do you like go through like the stuff that you're doing and calm yourself down or realize when when some of those blows are realistic and you actually do start changing the things you've been doing?
That's a really good question, and I think it ebbs and flows. I think if you're always confident all the time, you're probably not being realistic about certain things. So that's my take, at least. I mean, there's moments when I'm really confident in a product design or an idea, and then other times something I even liked the day before, I just don't like the next day, or don't like the week later. There's been, there's low points, and I think all product development and product work. What you're talking about is a little bit different than what I'm going through right now. But I've had over the past year, I've been working on the new Basecamp 3. There's been moments where I'm like, this just isn't good yet. And I'm frustrated by that because what the hell? We've been working on it for 6 months. Like, why is this not good yet? Why is this not better yet than the previous version? Or like, what's going on? And then I just remind myself that like, it's a work in progress and we're getting there. We're moving towards something that's better. And sometimes you take a step back on something, because it seemed like the right idea. This actually just came up today. So I formally announced internally that we're going with this different design direction that we worked on last week. And part of it actually means we're taking a step backwards from an earlier promise that we made to ourselves about how flexibility was really important in this new Basecamp. We were making this new Basecamp and it's extremely flexible. Previous versions of Basecamp have been a lot more rigid. And we kept hearing like, I want to organize stuff my own way. I want to keep things in my own sort of structure. And so we went very strongly forward on that design direction. And for the past 6 months or so, let's call it, since we've been using this product heavily, it's been very flexible. We found that flexibility, you can hang yourself with flexibility too. And what we found was that Yeah, it is infinitely flexible, but infinitely flexible is not necessarily a great trait. Um, when you're working with other people, so it's really nice to have a really flexible setup yourself. You know, like your office at home or wherever you work, your desk might be messy, but you know where everything is, and stuff might be messy in your drawers, but you know where everything is. Because your space is infinitely flexible, but you know the rules. If someone else comes into your space and has to find something, they can't find it because there's no consistent advertised structure to it, right? You're like, oh, I know where that is, but they don't know where it is. And so what we found was that as we were making this tool that allowed people to organize things in a whole bunch of different ways, it only was good for the person who was organizing the things a whole bunch of different ways. Everyone else who had to work with them had a hard time finding things. And I was really, really confident in the flexibility angle originally. That was the original design spec and the design idea, and the early pitch and the whole thing. And then I lost confidence in it. And it was hard to admit that to myself, that like this idea that I had, which was, you know, to create this really flexible tool, it works in practice and it works early on, but it as it ages, it breaks down and you find yourself in dangerous patterns. And at that moment, I kind of was pretty pissed, actually, myself, mostly. I mean, I'm not pissed at anyone else about it. It's just like I was pissed because I'm like, damn it, this idea isn't quite as good as I thought it was, and that's a hard thing to come to terms with at some level. But then you go, all right, well, what are we going to do about that? What can we save from that? How can we change the direction a little bit to make it both consistent and flexible? And came up with a new idea, and I pitched that today. But part of that is losing some power. So like we've stepped back on power, but we've stepped forward on clarity. We can always layer power back later on and stuff. But I guess what I'm getting at is that there was moments in this project, in this product development, where I was like really feeling like this isn't getting better, it's getting worse. And I was ignoring some of the problems with it because I was too confident in the idea. But ultimately, the execution proved that it wasn't really as good as the idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you just kind of have to move on and find something new to deal with and get your confidence back on it. And I'm feeling really, really, really good about where we're headed now with just a few weeks to go. But that's sort of how it happens. But so I guess my point is that it ebbs and it flows. And if you have a bad month in August, like it may just be August. It may be something you did. It may be nothing. It may be everything. You just don't know. But you gotta kind of like hopefully figure it out a little bit. But also like you just got to keep pushing forward and working the ideas and still working the product and still making it better. And hopefully things turn around. I mean, obviously there's certain things that you can look at, like Google referrals were down, or some, like, you know, there's some things you can find that are like you can clearly tie to that, but sometimes you can't find anything. And then that's kind of the worst part for the confidence, I think, when you like can't even find the reason for it, because you're like, then you're flailing around but anyway, I'm not really giving you any good answers here other than like, I think it comes and goes and it happens in different ways. And the only thing you can do is just know that things are, I mean, I always think things are just going to get better in the long term, and just kind of keep the long-term view of it.
Yeah.
I don't know, that probably doesn't, I feel like that isn't really a good answer, but that's just how I see it.
No, and I think, I mean, it's always good to hear it from other people. I mean, I'm sure people listening to this are going to like be pretty jazzed to hear that, you can go through this stuff too. And yes, like these attitudes change. And it's weird. I don't know what happens. Like it actually kind of shocked me. Friday, it was like Thursday or Friday, and a guy emailed me who I hadn't talked to a long time. We hired him, I think, as a contractor on a project with Inkling many years ago. And he was looking to see if I had connections to, I think, other JavaScript developers he was looking for. And we had lost touch over the years, and he had actually he emailed me a profile. He took a screenshot of my Twitter profile, I believe. And it was just funny, like I have this Twitter profile. I was like, I don't ever read it, but it mentions like this stuff that I've accomplished. And it's just wild to like, man, that's great. Like when I look at it almost from like a third person perspective, it's like awesome. I'm very happy with that. But it's crazy. It's crazy how quickly you can get separated from those previous accomplishments and just be like, man, what am I doing? What did I do? It's funny. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that was to see that, but I don't know. I'm letting everybody else know too. Like, yeah, I don't know. My confidence can get shattered pretty quick too.
Yeah, it happens. I mean, the other thing I've just thinking about the answer a little bit more too is, if something big isn't going well, find something small that's going well and build on that, or sometimes like the product isn't going in the direction you want, but where it will be in 6 weeks, and you're like, I just will pin myself on the fact that I know how we can make this better. Like sometimes we'll launch a design internally and like doesn't feel right. I don't know why, but the proportions aren't right or something's not right. And I'm like, we'll get it right. We'll get it right. Like I can be bothered by this right now in this very moment, or I can be like, we'll get it right. I'm not worried about it. We have time. We'll like figure it out. And so I think sometimes it's about just like not getting stuck on like imperfections when it's a work in progress. Again, we're not really talking about the same thing that you're talking about, which is like the numbers weren't good in August or something like that. Like that's more of a concrete thing, but there probably was something that was good in August. And maybe it's good just to find those things and maybe there was some infrastructure work that you did that like no one really knows about yet. I'm making this stuff up, but like no one really knows about what yet, but you guys can feel really good about that and hang your hats on that and then move forward and wait for the next month to see what the numbers are like. I know with Know Your Company, which is another one of the products that we built and spun off, Claire's had a few bad months and then she's had great months. And she's like, I don't really know why. I just couldn't close leads 1 month and the next month I closed a bunch more than I've ever closed before. Like I can't attribute it to anything. Maybe I'm not looking closely enough, but sometimes it just is that way. I think the thing is when you string 3 or 4 or 5 bad months together, then there's maybe a pattern, but sometimes just things do ebb and flow. That's just kind of the nature of everything, I think.
Yeah. Well, how often
I'm plugging my computer on, so I'm hearing you, but I have to go around my desk for a second to get my power cord. So keep going.
Okay. How often are you looking at metrics? How glued are you to them?
Me, not much personally. I've never been a metrics-driven person. We have a lot of metrics though, and it depends on sort of the group. I think Noah, who runs sort of our data and a variety of other things too, but he's sort of in charge of data. He's really the ops team, the technical operations team is really really works closely with Noah to monitor performance and really work on that side of things in terms of numbers and metrics. That's something we're dead serious about making things faster and more performant and a variety of things like that, and measuring speed and page loads and figure out where the slow spots are and the whole thing. So that's really a metrics-driven group. Design, not so much. Development is tied into the ops work in terms of performance and whatnot. And then support was really metrics-driven for a while to try and get the response times down to a minute or two, and figuring out how to stagger schedules and when the peak tickets were coming in, all that kind of stuff. So we've used metrics in those ways. I've just never really been. Like, one thing I've learned about myself over the past few years is like you got to know yourself, and like I'm just not driven by that stuff. I'm just not, flat out not. And that may not be great for someone who's running the company, but it is just who I am. And I'm more of I enjoy gut-driven stuff a little bit more. I love qualitative research and talking to people and getting insights and hunches and stuff from people. And then I am curious about how those things perform, but I don't generally get ideas from looking at data. I don't get original new ideas from looking at data. Those things come from somewhere else, and then obviously, hopefully, we should measure some of these things and make sure they're good and they work. But I don't know. I'm just not one of those guys.
Yeah,
I feel bad about it sometimes. I feel like I should care about that, but I just haven't been driven by that. And I think it's one thing just to understand who you are, and you can get better at certain things clearly, but like some things you just don't really. It sounds flippant, but like I just don't care about that stuff sometimes.
Yeah, I've been kind of flipping back and forth on like how much time I spend looking at this stuff. in the past, I just didn't care. And then I started getting more interested in it. I mean, I think a lot of, I don't know, there's a lot of culture, startup culture that's like, I got to pick those key performance, not
Right.
performance. Performance I'm on top of. Like I've got alerts going out like crazy if this thing starts performing differently. But when
Yeah.
it comes to like, people using it or engaging, how many people came back this month that signed up this month? Um, I don't know those things. I don't know. Not the older I get, I just keep finding like stuff like August happens. Like you can't, like you're saying, like with Claire, like stuff you just can't even explain. Like just happens. Like you can't explain it away. And just almost looking at these numbers just become this unhealthy fixation. In the time I spend worrying about like why the numbers aren't, I could be investing in something that is going to move the needle so much more. Than worrying about some maybe short-term gains, even if I can, um, do something about some of these short-term numbers. So yeah, I don't think it's bad at all. I agree with you.
Well,
It's so tempting to look at the numbers though.
I think that it's important to have somebody who's looking at numbers
Oh
at
yeah,
some level, right? You got to figure out what you are good at and what drives you and what interests you. I'd much rather personally talk to people than I would look at numbers, because I don't see stories in numbers as much as maybe other people do. Um, but Noah is paying attention to numbers all the time. David's definitely more numbers driven than I am in certain areas. Um, you know, there's other people in the company who are very numbers driven. So I think it's good to have a healthy mix. But I also think fundamentally, and this is just more of a corollary for other things, but I just think it's important to know who you are and what you're into. And if paying attention to numbers all day makes you unhappy, then don't pay attention to numbers.
right.
And if you just get depressed because this number wasn't as good as it should have been according to some article or whatever, or like your conversion rate, the average SaaS conversion rate, I'm making numbers up, is 6%
Yep.
something, and you're like 5.2 and you're just pissed. It's just not healthy. It's just not healthy. So I think it all depends on figuring out what drives you and what you're interested in. And if there's something that's really critically important for your company and you're not into it, you should find someone who can be, or someone else who is.
Totally.
And that's true, I think, for anything.
Yeah. Even
Um,
historically, like when I mean, that was a big reason, like, when I started my first company, when I started Inkling in like 2005, I mean, I created it because I really did have this feeling that like, man, I was going, Inkling was this company to do, wisdom of crowds. People could, buy and sell fake stock, virtual stock in
yep.
predictions or decisions. And when I created it, I really created it because I thought I could use it to even get people in my friends and family to help me make decisions on the stuff I was thinking about. There's a guy, Javon at Basecamp. He has a friend, this guy, Mikey. I'm going to get his name wrong. No, anyway, he actually
Yep.
runs his life as a stock exchange. People can actually buy shares and they become shareholders in this guy, and they vote and they tell him what to do. And it's really kind of fun. It's serious sort of, but it's not that big of a deal. But that type of thing I was really interested in, to see if I could turn it actually into a business. But as we did it, like it just got, the revenue came from, really selling it to like these enterprise companies, and it's great. I mean, I'm glad the company can run as that, but it's that type of thing that's just like, I'm just selling a product that I can't really understand as much, because I'm only really solving problems of like organizations with tens of thousands of people. And it's just not something, it's great that company can run and do that, but it's like my heart just, I can't keep, running it with my heart that's not in it like that.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I mean, yes, I think you got to pick the things you do that I don't know, keep your heart in it. I couldn't get into it to sell enterprise software like that.
At a deeper level, I mean, I've as we've grown to roughly 50 people here at Basecamp, I've and David and I both have discovered that we're more interested in product development than we are like flat out running companies. Um, and so we've been searching for a COO to help us actually run the company day to day, and do some other things as well. And it's sort of it's a weird realization to come to that like I don't like running the company side of things as much as I used to. When we were smaller, it was just sort of the product and the company were the same thing. And now when you have, 50 people and different groups of people and just flat out different demands in your time, and you're unable to give everyone the amount of time that you feel like they need and they want from you, and like you start to feel guilty about it, and then you feel like you can't perform, and then it's something's on your mind that you can't get to, and it's just like you just got to at some point understand like what you're good at and what you want to do. And if you want to be deep in product, I don't think you can be deep in the company at a certain size. You can when you're smaller because it's the same thing. And so we've set out to find a COO to help us with a lot of the things that like a lot of the gaps have just formed between David and I and the rest of the company in terms of time to help out in a variety of areas and things we've dropped the ball on, stuff like that. So it's all the same realization, which is like, what do you enjoy doing? How can you spend most of your time doing that? How can you find other people who enjoy other things and are really good at other things, and build a team up to where not everyone is doing the same thing, but everyone has really good areas of interest and expertise, and just. But I think it's important to be honest with yourself about that. And it kind of took me a while to get honest with myself about it, because I felt like I started this company. I should be running the company. Like that's what I should be doing because I started. But it's just less. I just don't feel like I'm as good at it as someone else would be, at that level. So this is all like, that's just sort of another type of connection of just looking at what you're good at and what you enjoy doing, and doing more of that, and finding other people to help you with other things.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, we,
you did a similar thing.
Yeah. I brought in Lynette in August as our chief operating officer of Highrise, and it's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
For the same reason you're saying. I mean, it's like starting Inkling was really neat. I had this partner, Adam Siegel, who two people now running a company. I don't know. There's just something also about just like the two people that are close and can kind of, share the burden of even some of these decisions, and have a very kind of closeness to kind of talk through some of this stuff. And then that was missing at Draft and what I was doing there, and I totally missed it. And now doing Highrise, there's so many things, so many decisions, and I've there's some really great people that are helping me at Highrise, but I still just kind of miss that closeness of someone like Adam to kind of get this stuff done. And man, yeah, having Lynette around, it's like she's taking a lot of stuff that I feel like I don't maybe enjoy as much, but I'm not even maybe as good at just even organize some of these things. Like we had this conversation today where she was like going over, you and I have talked about these train schedules and this cadence that I want to have in getting stuff out the door. And, I kind of, put out kind of some sort of very shaky, hand-wavy schedule of the stuff that I want to get done, but it's hard for me to like make sure everybody's getting this done, and how how close are we to this. And meanwhile, I'm like in deep trying to make something good myself. And here she is, she's like bounced around the teams, making sure everything's going on. I had this conversation with her, and she's like, this thing probably isn't going to happen. We got to like rejigger some stuff and figure out what's going to happen. And it was just like, oh my God, thank God I have you thinking about this, because like I get you to think about this, and we're gonna like keep going with the cadence that I want. Meanwhile, I get to like keep working on stuff that I want to get done and making a really great feature. And it's really great. Yeah, it's been awesome having her around. It's only been like, I don't know, a few weeks, and it's already like just changing my happiness level, and just the like my even my own confidence to like get some really good stuff done myself without being all distracted in these other things. So I think it's a really good decision you're making, just based on how it's gone for us so far.
Yeah, we're very excited about it too. I think it's just going to be good for the company.
Cool.
Because there's a certain point where you feel like you're not living up to your full potential because you are actually holding the company back. Because you are supposed to be running it, but you're not. Like, it's interesting how that comes to be. So anyway, it's we're looking forward to that whole process.
Cool.
I was just looking back at the some other topics we were considering talking about. We only have a few more minutes here.
I have a
yeah, go for it.
Well, I mean, this is more. I mean, we talk a lot about like negotiation and balance, like on this show, and I mean, it crops up in everything from like feature development to even like writing. Like, how do you, here I am like working on product, and I still kind of struggle with like how much time I want to spend and how much time I should be spending, even on like marketing and just getting the word out. Like, I don't know, do you keep any kind of rule of thumb, or have you learned anything about kind of what you do or how you do it? Like, like in the past, I've tried to be good about like publishing one blog post a week, but like, man, like just working on business and product and now doing this, even this podcast, it changes it. And it's, I want to get back to a more frequent writing schedule, but it's tough. Yeah. Have you fooled with schedules, or what have you learned from kind of like?
I'm not good at anything that's scheduled. Actually, I've kind of learned that. Another thing I've learned about myself. I mean, I have a schedule for like meetings I need to be at or phone calls or whatever. But as far as putting myself on a schedule, it's just too easy for me to push that around with no one to really keep me accountable. If I know there's a call at 3 and other people are going to be on the call, I will be there. But if I'm telling myself I'm going to do this at 3 and no one's going to be hurt if I'm not, because it's just for me, I tend not to do it. So what I found with writing, which is interesting, is that I find the more I talk, the more I write. And that this, for example, this show that we've been doing has thrown a bunch of new ideas in my head that I want to get down in writing. And so that's kind of how I figured out, if I get stuck in a rut where I don't have anything to write or don't know what to write, I end up just trying to talk to people about topics, or talk out loud about work or whatever it is, and like something inevitably will hit. That's kind of what's always helped me get out of writer's block is actually talking. I'm not writing, not like sitting down and saying like at 4 o'clock I have to write something. That just doesn't work so well. The other thing I found is that I've been writing in single takes lately. So I just sit down and write something and publish it, and then I go back and edit it after it's live. And fix some spelling errors and fix some punctuation.
That's funny. I noticed something in your post, and I was going to say something to you, and I'm just like, yeah, fuck it. You'll get it. You'll look over it.
Did it get fixed?
I think so. It was some stupid. It was a punctuation misspelled word or something. It was like it's versus it apostrophe s or something little.
That drives me crazy. But I that's what I've been doing. And maybe I might actually write about this, which is like single takes. And I've been sort of inspired by how raw music can be when it's like a single take and it's not overproduced, or like those great scenes in movies where they have a single take and they just kind of do it. And like, I just find that what's really great about the medium we all work in, which is the web or whatever, is that like I publish it. That's the most important thing, publishing it, because then it's live. And then I can go back and reread it live and edit it a little bit and tighten it up if I need to. But the hardest thing is hitting the publish button. And I just feel like if that's part of the process, which is I publish first, edit second, knowing that like I know myself well enough that I'm not going to make huge mistakes all over the place. And if they are, they're probably hopefully minor, or I miss something here and there. But like I feel pretty good about my first takes. That actually helps me write more, because I know that the process is going to be swift. Like I know I can write a 500-word piece in 10 minutes. Like I can just write that, bang that out, and then go look it over and tighten it up some more. And maybe it's better as a 400-word piece, and maybe I'll eliminate some things and whatever. I just find that to be a really good process. And because I found that writing can be really intimidating when you're like, I got to get it right. I got to sit down at this time and like bang something out. And if I bang it out for 7 minutes, it's like, well, I scheduled this time just for 7 minutes worth of writing. It's got to be more than that. I've got to spend a half hour at it or an hour at it, and then you overdo it, and you're not quite happy with it, and you go down too many roads. So
yeah, that's a really good point.
Single take articles, I think, are pretty fun. Also keeps them relatively short, which I think is also pretty valuable when you're just kind of trying to get an idea out and not feel like every idea has to be this epic write-up of. Like one of the things I like about your posts a lot is that they have these like you're weaving together multiple stories, which requires it requires a lot of thought and planning about like how to weave the stories together. And I can imagine that takes like a lot of time to plan versus just like writing the story, like I try to do. Anyway, maybe take a couple swipes at single take articles and just publish them.
Yeah, and I've actually, I've been on Reddit these days. I've been doing a lot of like, I find writing a comment on a place like Reddit or a blog comment, I have a lot less care if it's good, and I'll like you're saying, like I'll just bang through in like my comments then are like sometimes 500, 600 words. I'll just write a really long comment about something, and then they're misspelled. I don't care what they're I might even get some of it wrong or repeat a sentence. I'll like screw it up totally, but I'll look it over to look, you know, but you're right. Like I get that stuff out there quicker. And if I like it, if I like how it turned out, I'll sometimes republish it to a place like a blog or Signal versus Noise or something. But yeah, I might even just start doing the single take articles. I like that a lot.
I've also found that in general, if I over practice something, it's worse than like the raw early version of it.
Yeah.
I found this with speaking too. I've stopped preparing. I think we may have talked about this. I'm not sure, but I don't give prepared talks anymore. Everything's spontaneous, off the cuff sort of thing. And I just feel like they're better. They're better that way. I can respond to the audience. I can respond to the moment, and I'm not thinking back about what I was supposed to say or over practicing and then like losing the spark. And I feel like writing, single take writing is similar, where you just kind of have this raw energy of an idea and you get it out without polishing it so much that you lose the sharpness to it, and it's like so smooth and just loses a little bit of the heat. So anyway, I'd suggest giving that a shot.
Totally. I feel like I want to try actually even doing recording myself and then sending it to someone to like write it up, what I just said.
Oh, almost like, like dictating a post and then have someone else. Yeah. Right.
I'm tempted to try it. I've tried to use Google Voice for it, but it hasn't succeeded very well.
Something we might want to consider then is having someone transcribe these talks and publish them as articles.
That's true.
Like curious to see how what that would look like.
That's true.
Do you know of any transcription services that are reasonable or?
No, I've looked briefly, but yeah, nothing stuck out. I don't know what rates are or what it would cost.
Yeah, we shouldn't use Google Voice though. I don't know if I use Google Voice for my voicemail. The transcriptions are just hilarious.
They're terrible.
They're terrible, and they're just kind of hilarious. But anyway, cool. Well, we're done. This is a good
chat, dude.
Show 15. What about tomorrow? What time is good for you?
3 p.m. I think works tomorrow.
Let me just double check. Yep, I'm good tomorrow as well.
Cool, man. I will talk to you at 3 tomorrow.
Adios.
Bye, guys. Have a good night.